When you're a boater and you have engine trouble, you only have three options: fix the engine, replace the engine, or buy a new boat. And sometimes the first option isn't even an option if the old engine gets to a certain point of no return. Then the last option leaves any of us with a huge financial decision that a lot of times might not even be an option either, leaving us without a choice in the matter and dictating us to go with the middle option of replacing the engine. But what does that really mean? And what exactly do you get when you buy another engine? Which is also dependent on whether or not you are buying a brand new engine or you are buying a used engine. Sometimes when you buy a used engine, the seller will be including all of the old rigging that goes to the engine. Whereas when you are buying a new engine, there isn't any actual boat rigging included in the transaction, unless you purchase it with it. But there are quite a few other options that normally come with a brand new engine. Now, the marina where I work at is a Mercury dealership, so we will be using a Mercury engine for this video. But this will actually be pretty consistent with most other outboard brands. Now, when it comes to the engine itself, they do come with a little bit of engine oil and gear lube in the engine. Whoever installs the engine still needs to check and top off both of these oils, because they are usually a little bit low, and it is one of the checks that has to be done on the pre-delivery inspection sheet, or PDI, which has to be done for every new engine that gets sold from a dealership, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Other than the oils getting topped off, there isn't much else included on the actual engine itself, and that includes not coming with a prop. So after buying the engine, we'll still need to buy a $500, $600, $800 propeller to put on the thing. One thing that is different about certain Mercuries though is that on the right-handed Verados, which have power steering, actually come with a steering cylinder on the engine, whereas on any of their smaller engines or non-power assisted steering engines do not come with this cylinder. And that goes for most other brands and the left-handed engines as well. With the exception of Yamaha's 425, but that's a whole other class in and of itself, so we'll skip over that discussion for today. Now, each engine is going to come with a couple of boxes of goodies. Depending on what size engine we are talking about, for both engines, we're going to find that they have a bag of paperwork, and we'll talk about that in a second. The larger engines are going to have a bag of rigging components, which come with the rigging tube adapter as well as a grommet that goes in the rigging tube connector. Then it will also have some new engine mounting bolts. Some of the engines will also come with a water separator kit that includes the water separator bracket, a new water separator, and then also the wire that goes to the water separator sensor that is also included in the rigging kit. Then when we go back to talking about this bag of paperwork, we are going to find that there is a warranty registration card, which is the card that has to be filled out with all the engine and client information and then turned in to register the engine. Without doing this, then the engine's warranty won't get activated, and at least for Mercury, if an engine isn't warranted within 6 years, then it is no longer warrantable. Then we will have the outboard operation or owner's manual. Some of them will have the warranty included in the same book, but then for most of the bigger engines, you'll have two separate books for the owners and operations book and the warranty book. But truthfully, these are actually super helpful and have all kinds of information in them. There are also these pamphlets for the protection policy and the carb sign, which is the California's Air Resources Board ratings for emissions and pollution control. This gives all outboards a rating of their emissions from 1 star all the way up to the 4-star rating, and this has affected the marine industry in many ways, but we'll cover that in a later video. Then there is a customer acknowledgement card that basically just lets the client say they received all the other paperwork. And this is just a piece of paper that talks about who is responsible for something showing up damaged, which just says that the engine was fine when it left the plant, and if it shows up busted, then the carrier is responsible for paying for the damaged item as long as whoever accepts the product files for it. But this brings us back to the operations manual, which has all the warranty information if you don't have the separate warranty book. Then it's got all the different general information stuff like lanyards and boat horsepower capacities, as well as all the fuel and oil recommendations. The operations like the engine break-in procedure, and also all the maintenance items like outboard care, flushing, lubing, oil changes, and gear case lubrication. Storage info, your maintenance log, and other information that will be helpful to anyone that is not familiar with the ins and outs of the engine. And then we can talk about the PDI sheet. This sheet is what needs to be filled out for any new engine. This is basically the checklist for all the things that need to be checked out on the engine to ensure that there isn't anything messed up with it before we put it into full-time use. This is broken down into 3 sections, with the first section being the checks to be done before running the engine, like checking for service bulletins, lower unit oil, engine tight on transom, gasoline oil mixture for break-in, steering operation, controls, harnesses, battery levels, tilt operation, trim fluid, engine oil levels, and the rest of the things that you want to check for before starting the engine. Then with all of these things checked off whether they were okay or not applicable, we have the check while running items, being all the normal stuff like your telltale water stream, instruments, neutral locks, neutral safety switch to ensure the engine won't start when in gear, the idle RPM, trim operation, and any kinds of leaks or issues that could be visibly found when starting the engine for the first time. Once we've checked all of those items off, we've got the check after running list, just to make sure that the oil levels are still correct, that there were no leaks, the props tight on the lower unit, and then hanging that carb tag and getting the operations manuals to the client. Once all that stuff is done, then you can go over the engine and boat and everything with the new owner of the engine and make sure everything is in order and everyone is happy, making sure they know how the lanyard operates and all that good stuff. Then something interesting about the smaller engines is that we have these extra items here, like a brand new spark plug, a pull start string, and the engine lanyard. As well as this little black kit of tools for different things. We've got a pair of pliers here, a Phillips screwdriver, and then these 2 things here, which are socket sets with a 10mm and a 13mm. We just slide this other rod into the socket and you've got a handy set of tools to help you change out the spark plug or get things apart on the engine while you are out in case you run into any issue with the little kicker engine. All of this in a convenient bag, which is basically all we get with a brand new engine. Leaving us to wonder how many of you have ever gotten a brand new engine before. What are your thoughts and how was your experience? Let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and remember, you can visit us at bornagainboating.com. We want to thank you all for hanging out with us this week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.